Boker Rabotai, we continue our study of the Taryag Mitzvot, and we are up to the Mitzvah number 348. And that is Shelo Lehaniach Goy La'avod Be'eved Ivri and Nimkar Lo. It's a negative commandment. It's in Parashat Behar. The Pasuk is Lo Yirdenu Beferech Le'anecha. Perech Hafeh, Pasuk Nun Gimel. What are we talking about over here? Talking about a case where you have a Jew that obviously was hard pressed, he needed money, and he sold himself to a Goy. And the Goy now is putting him under slavery. And he's working for him under conditions that the Torah refers to as Avodat Parich, which we understood in an earlier mitzvah, which means he is giving him not only difficult labor, but psychological torture, doing jobs for no purpose, doing jobs that don't have an end to it, open-ended jobs, which causes a lot of anguish and sa'ar to the Eved. So the Torah comes along and says we're not allowed to allow that situation to happen. But if we see a Jew being oppressed by a Goy as an Eved, so it's our responsibility to step in and redeem him and save him. And not to say that, well, it's his fault, he sold himself. Who told him to sell himself? Therefore, if he wants to be an Eved and that's his decision, so therefore let him suffer. No, even though he made a mistake by selling himself to the Goy, it's still our responsibility to save him. Now the Pasuk says, Lo yirdenu beferich le'enecha. Le'enecha, the Chinuch learns, means only if you actually see it. You have to witness it. But we're not obligated to go knock on doors and go make bedikat abadim to go check to see if there's a Jew in the house, and if there is a Jew, if he's being treated correctly or not. Bedikat hametz we're obligated to make, but not bedikat in this case over here, as the pasuk says, le'enecha. Now this mitzvah applies male and female alike, and it only applies, the Chinuch writes, bizman sheyadenu takifa al ha'umot. Obviously, we have to have power and sovereignty over the umot, over the nation. We cannot just go into a Goy's house today, let's say, and pull a guy out and arrest him and punish him. Obviously, it's talking about where we have a certain sovereignty and rights in order to punish and make laws. So then already we have the koach in order to stop it. If somebody does not stop it, he transgresses this lav. It's a lav that there is no malkut, because it's a lav she'en bo ma'aseh. There is no action necessarily. The way we transgress this is by not doing anything. And by not doing anything is an inaction. And there's no malkut for an inaction. Now, the Chinuch sounds like that this mitzvah is on everybody, even on the regular guy in the street. But from other Rishonim, it sounds like the mitzvah is on the Bedin, that they have the responsibility to enforce this law. Finally, Harambam, in Ilchot Matanot Aniyim, in Perek Chet, in Halacha Yud, he writes that from here we learn the mitzvah also of Pidyon Shivuim, that if we have somebody that's in captivity, we have responsibility to redeem them. And if somebody does not involve himself in the mitzvah of Pidyon Shivuim, so then he transgresses this law. Now, it should be pointed out, this is something that, regardless of what you say in this mitzvah, it's always a mitzvah to redeem a Jew from a situation of a Goy, even if he's not working befarich. So that's the question that they all ask on this mitzvah. Even if it's not befarich, you still have to go and try to save the guy and bring him back to a Jewish, Jewish culture and Jewish society. So it's just an extra issue. Besides the mitzvah that you have to save the guy and bring him out, if there's avodat parich in that situation, you don't stop him, so there'll be an extra transgression. Again, it just shows us our responsibility. We cannot come along and say, well, listen, he made his decisions and therefore, good luck to him. That's not the case. We're all responsible for each other. Even if a person finds himself in a bad place, so that's our obligation in order to save him. We can learn from over here that there's some people that have sold themselves to avodat parich, not to a goy, but sold themselves to drugs, or sold themselves to addiction, or other types of masters that are not physical masters, but they're definitely enslaved. And there's no question that those vices are causing a lot of avodat parech, psychological and physical torture for the person. We could expand this mitzvah, this manazeh. So even though maybe these no laws of Eved Ivri today, but they are laws of that invisible taskmaster called addiction, and therefore it'd be our responsibility that if we see somebody that's under the grips of an addiction or a vice, and we have the ability to step in and help, or bring them out of it and save him in whichever way we know, or to bring him to the right people that know how to do that, we have to know that we don't only learn the Teriyag mitzvot to know the mitzvah. We're trying to understand Hashem's view of the world. What does Hashem want from us? So this is a technical case where you have a person that's working for somebody else, but we have to know the overview of it. What's the lesson? What's the moral of the story? The moral of the story is that if you see a Jew that's in a bad place, if you see something, you have to do something. And if you don't do it, then the Torah comes along and says, we're going to be able to respond. And we can't say, well, it's his fault who told him to become a drug addict, who told him to become a gambler. It's not our fault. That's between him and himself. But that's from our responsibility. We have an obligation. When we see somebody in perech, we cannot just walk away. As the pasuk says, "Lo yirdenu beferech le'enecha." If you see it, you have to do something.